Commander Jake Donovan stood before the Galactic Council with his hands clasped behind his back, maintaining perfect military posture while internally composing a list of things he'd rather be doing. Getting sucked into a black hole ranked somewhere around number 7, just below listening to Vexthor's speeches but above eating Quellan food paste. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings that disappeared into darkness, floating platforms arranged in a semicircle like judgmental moons, and lighting that somehow made everyone look either holy or villainous, depending on which side of the podium they stood. Jake had the distinct impression he was on the villainous side. Counselor Vexthor, a 7-foot-tall avian whose plumage seemed to puff with self-importance, spread his wing arms wide. Commander Donovan, you stand accused of 17 violations of Galactic military protocol, 43 instances of reckless endangerment and general humanness. Pretty sure that last one isn't actually a crime, Jake muttered. Silence! Vexthor's beak clacked with indignation. You diverted an entire battle group to rescue a colony ship against direct orders. The colony ship was full of civilians, including Counselor Zexnel's third cousin. A purple-skinned counselor in the back row suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Vexthor continued, undeterred. You commandeered a council diplomatic vessel to chase pirates through the Helix Nebula and recovered 3 billion credits worth of stolen medical supplies. You're welcome. You violated the sacred protocol of engagement 7 times in a single battle. I won the battle. The protocol of engagement was written by someone who'd clearly never been shot at. The murmur that rippled through the council chamber told Jake he'd just committed his 44th instance of reckless endangerment. This time to his career. Vexthor's feathers bristled. Your insubordination is precisely why humanity should never have been granted command positions. You lack the refinement for civilized warfare. Jake bit back several responses that would have proven Vexthor's point. Instead, he watched as the counselor produced a ceremonial blade, more letter opener than weapon really, and approached with theatrical slowness. By the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, I hereby strip you of your rank and privileges. Vexthor sliced through the insignia on Jake's shoulder with obvious satisfaction. The silver commander's bars clattered to the marble floor with a sound like a jail cell closing. Jake stared at the insignia, then at Vexthor's smug face, then back at the insignia. So, what now? Do I get a participation trophy or, you are hereby reassigned to Archaeological Survey Division, Planet Kepler 442c. Perhaps cataloging dead civilizations will teach you respect for protocol. The other counselors murmured approval, already moving on to more important matters. Jake was yesterday's news. A problem solved. A reckless human put in his place. As security escorted him out, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been promoted. After all, how much trouble could he possibly get into on a dead planet? Famous last words, he thought. Planet Kepler 442c was, in Jake's professional opinion, the ass end of nowhere. It was a dead rock that had been dead so long it had probably forgotten it was ever alive. The council designation was Archaeological Site Gamma 447, but the survey teams called it Dustball 9, and even that felt generous. Jake's transport touched down near a prefab research station that looked like it had been assembled by someone who'd lost the instruction manual halfway through. The building squatted on the barren landscape like a metal mushroom, its solar panels coated in rust-colored dust. Waiting at the airlock was the sorriest excuse for a welcoming committee Jake had ever seen. The first was a Quellan, a species known for having 4 arms and absolutely zero sense of adventure. This particular specimen was young, barely out of academy training if Jake had to guess, and clutching a data pad like it was a shield against the universe's chaos. His 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a nervous tic Jake recognized from his time commanding Quellan crew members. Commander Donovan? I mean Mr. Donovan? Sir? I'm Pip, Junior Archaeological Assistant 3rd Class. I'll be your supervisor. Jake raised an eyebrow. My supervisor? Well, technically, since you've been demoted, and I have seniority in the Archaeological Division by 3 months, protocol states that Kid, if it makes you happy, you can be the Supreme Chancellor of Dustball 9. I'm just here to serve my sentence. Pip's relief was palpable. Oh, good. I was worried you'd, be difficult. The second member of the welcome wagon rolled forward on treads that squeaked with mechanical arthritis. The robot was roughly humanoid, painted in faded yellow with stenciled letters reading, Mort Mechanized Observation and Retrieval Tool. Another human. Mort's voice dripped with digital sarcasm. Wonderful. Let me guess. You did something incredibly stupid, called it heroism, and got shipped here. Actually, I did several incredibly stupid things, Jake corrected. And they were heroic. Nice to meet you too, Mort. It's a designation, not a name. And nothing about this is nice. I've been on this rock for 16 years, analyzing rocks that are older than most civilizations and exactly as interesting. But sure, let's add a disgraced human to the mix. That'll make everything better. Jake decided he liked Mort. Pip led them into the station, chattering nervously about protocols, safety procedures, and the critical importance of cataloging every artifact according to Council specifications. Jake nodded at appropriate intervals while studying the mission brief on his datapad. Kepler 442c had been surveyed 3 times. Each survey concluded the same thing. Ancient ruins, no active technology, nothing of strategic value. It was an archaeological footnote, a dead end, the perfect place to bury a troublesome human. For 2 weeks, Jake played along. He cataloged pottery shards. He measured wall dimensions. He listened to Pip explain the 17 different forms required to move a single artifact 6 inches to the left. He even pretended to care when Mort lectured him about proper excavation technique, but something bothered him. The ruins were extensive, far larger than preliminary surveys had indicated, and there were patterns in the architecture that suggested the civilization had been more advanced than the Council gave them credit for. On day 15, Jake's scanner picked up something that made him stop mid-excavation. Energy signature, he said quietly. Pip looked up from his forms, all 4 eyes widening. That's impossible. The planet is geologically dead. There's no geothermal activity, no. I'm reading a power source. Faint, but definitely artificial. About 2 kilometers east, roughly 300 meters underground. Mort rolled closer, his sensors whirring. He's right. How did we miss this? Because the Council's survey teams were looking for strategic resources, not operational technology, Jake said, already packing his gear. They did a half-assed job and moved on. Pip's translator implant struggled with half-assed, but managed. We should report this to the Council. Protocol requires that we investigate all anomalies, Jake interrupted, slinging his pack over his shoulder. So let's investigate. But there are proper channels. We need authorization forms, safety assessments, a full survey team. Jake was already walking toward the door. Come or don't, Pip. But I'm not sitting on the only interesting thing to happen on this planet in a million years, while we wait for the Council to send a committee to form a subcommittee to consider scheduling a meeting about maybe looking into it. Mort's treads squeaked as he followed. I hate humans, but I hate boredom more. Let's go. Pip looked at his datapad, then at the door, then at the datapad again. With a sound somewhere between a whimper and a sigh, he grabbed his equipment and hurried after them. The energy signature led them to a canyon system the surveys had marked as geologically stable but uninteresting. Jake was beginning to suspect the survey teams had marked the entire planet that way without actually looking. At the canyon floor, half buried in sediment, they found it. A sealed entrance carved with symbols that predated anything in the Council's historical database. We are violating so many protocols right now, Pip whispered, all 4 hands shaking as he scanned the door. Add it to my list, Jake said, running his fingers along the symbols. They were warm, impossibly warm for a dead planet. The door recognized his touch and opened with a sound like a sleeping giant taking its first breath in eons. Okay, Mort said into the darkness beyond. Even I think this is a bad idea. Jake grinned and activated his headlamp. That's how you know it's the right one. The passage descended at a gentle angle, the walls lined with the same unknown symbols that covered the entrance. Jake's headlamp illuminated centuries of dust that scattered in their wake like disturbed ghosts. The air itself felt charged with potential energy, making the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "This architecture is pre-council," Pip said, his nervousness momentarily overridden by academic fascination. Maybe even pre-formation. These civilizations were supposed to have been wiped out in the Great Collapse. Supposed to have been, Mort noted. But this facility has active power. The dead generally don't pay their electricity bills. The passage opened into a chamber that stole the breath from Jake's lungs. It was massive, cathedral-sized, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadow. The walls were covered in interlocking patterns that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally, and the floor was polished to mirror smoothness despite the eons. But the centerpiece of the chamber drew every eye, a crystalline artifact suspended in midair, rotating slowly in defiance of gravity. It was roughly the size of a human head, multifaceted and glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Streams of energy flowed from ceiling to floor around it, creating a cylindrical cage of pure power. Mort's sensors immediately went haywire, spinning and clicking in confusion. My databases have no reference for this technology. The energy output alone should be impossible with any known power source. Pip had frozen in the doorway, all four arms wrapped around his datapad. "We need to leave. Now. This is beyond our clearance level. Beyond any clearance level. We need to seal the entrance and call the council, and let Vexthor claim credit for the discovery." Jake was already moving toward the artifact, drawn by a curiosity that had gotten him into trouble his entire life. "Besides, we're archaeologists. This is literally our job. Our job is to catalog dead artifacts, not activate ancient superweapons." "Who said anything about superweapons?" "It's glowing and floating and pulsing with ominous energy. What else would it be?" Jake had to admit Pip had a point, but he was already within arm's reach of the artifact. Up close he could see symbols etched into each facet, the same language as the walls, but denser, more complex. A schematic maybe, or a star chart, or instructions. "Commander Donovan, Mr. Donovan, I am formally ordering you not to touch that." Pip's voice had climbed an octave. "You gave me permission to ignore your orders, remember? Supreme Chancellor? I take it back, I revoke it, Jake touched the artifact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world turned inside out. The energy streams intensified, wrapping around Jake like luminous serpents. The artifact's glow became blinding, and Jake felt something download directly into his neural implant. The standard military hardware every council officer carried for tactical data and communication. But this wasn't tactical data. This was everything. Schematics flooded his consciousness. Weapon systems, defense grids, fleet deployment protocols, strategic databases covering technologies that made council warships look like children's toys. And at the core of it all, a simple declaration that appeared in his mind's eye in perfect, comprehensible language. Command authority recognized. "Welcome, Fleet Commander Supreme." The energy streams retracted. The light dimmed. Jake stumbled backward, his head spinning with information that shouldn't fit in any human brain, but somehow did. Behind him, Pip had fainted. All four arms sprawled in different directions. Mort had gone completely silent. His systems apparently crashed from trying to process what they'd just witnessed. "Well," Jake said to the empty chamber, his voice echoing. "That's new." He closed his eyes and focused on the new data in his implant. It organized itself into clean categories: fleet status, weapons grid, planetary defense, command codes. He tried accessing fleet status, half expecting nothing to happen. A holographic display sprang to life above his wrist, showing the positions of 37 automated warships distributed across nearby systems. All active, all awaiting orders. "Oh, the council is going to hate this," Jake said, grinning despite himself. Mort's systems rebooted with a series of beeps and whistles. What just happened?" "My sensors recorded a data transfer of approximately 47 petabytes directly into your neural implant. That should have liquefied your brain." Maybe it did, and this is all a hallucination before I die. Jake pulled up another holographic display, this one showing a defense grid that spanned 12 systems. All operational, all ready for deployment, because I'm pretty sure I just got promoted to commander of a fleet that's been dead for 50,000 years. That's not possible. And yet. Jake gestured at the displays dancing in the air around him. Pip groaned from the floor. Are we dead? Please tell me we're dead. That would be so much simpler. Not dead, kid. Just accidentally found the most significant military artifact in galactic history. Jake dismissed the displays and looked back at the crystal, which had returned to its gentle, pulsing rotation. And I'm guessing the relic chose me because... He paused, thinking about it. Because humans are compatible somehow? Our neural architecture, maybe? Or because the ancient civilization that built this were also reckless idiots who ignored every safety protocol, Mort suggested. I prefer brave enough to lead, Jake said, remembering the message that had come with the download. That's what the relic said. This was left for those brave enough to lead. Not bureaucrats who wait for committee approval. Not by-the-book soldiers who follow orders blindly. Leaders who make hard choices. Pip had managed to sit up, though he still looked green. The council will never allow you to keep this. They'll confiscate it, study it, lock it away. Jake smiled, and it wasn't a particularly nice smile. Let them try. He reached out and touched the artifact again. This time there was no download, just a simple pulse of acknowledgement. The crystal rose from its position and floated to Jake's hand, shrinking until it was small enough to fit in his palm. The energy streams vanished. The chamber's lights dimmed to a faint glow. It's portable. Mort sounded offended by this development. 50,000 years of advanced technology and it's basically a fancy USB drive? More like a command key, Jake said, pocketing the crystal. It felt warm against his leg, like a living thing. Come on, we need to get back to the station. To report this? Pip asked hopefully. To pack. Because once the council finds out what I have, Dust Ball 9 is going to get very crowded very fast. They made their way back through the passage in silence, each lost in thought. Above them, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the star system, the ancient fleet received its first update in millennia, Commander Online, awaiting orders, and across council space, in government chambers and military headquarters, every single one of the ancient civilization's former outposts registered the same thing. Primary command authority, active. The council's very bad day was about to begin. The council chambers were in what could only be described as dignified chaos. Councilors shouted at each other in 17 different languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Holographic displays showed star charts with dozens of new contacts that shouldn't exist, appearing in systems that had been empty for 50,000 years. Vexthor stood at the central podium, his feathers ruffled in distress, trying to restore order with increasingly shrill demands for silence. It wasn't working. The chamber doors opened with a hiss that somehow cut through the noise. Every head turned as Jake Donovan walked in, flanked by a nervous Pip and a rolling Mort. Jake wasn't in custody, he wasn't in restraints. He walked with the casual confidence of someone who held all the cards and knew it. Counselor Vexthor, Jake said pleasantly. You wanted to see me? Seize him. Vexthor's beak clacked so hard it echoed. Donovan, you are under arrest for unauthorized activation of ancient technology, violating archaeological protocols, and let me stop you right there. Jake held up his hand, and a holographic display materialized above his palm, one that every counselor could see. It showed the 37 automated warships, each one broadcasting ancient identification codes that predated the council itself. I'm not sure you have the authority to arrest me anymore. The chamber fell silent. Even Vexthor's translator implant seemed to struggle with processing that statement. What have you done? Counselor Zexnell, the purple-skinned bureaucrat, leaned forward on his floating platform. I got promoted, Jake said simply. Found an ancient command relic on Dust Ball 9. Turns out it was looking for someone compatible to inherit command of a dead empire's military assets. Lucky me. That's preposterous, Vexthor sputtered. Ancient technology doesn't simply choose operators. It requires authorization, clearance, proper protocol, Jake suggested. Yeah. I don't think the people who built this were big on protocol. They were more into results. Mort rolled forward, his sensors active. For what it's worth, I verified everything. The warships are real, the defense grids are operational, and they all recognize Donovan's command codes. It's insane, but it's legitimate. A ripple of concern passed through the council. Several members were frantically checking their own databases, pulling up historical records on ancient civilizations and their technologies. Even if this is true, Vexthor said, regaining his composure with visible effort, you are still bound by council law. I demand you surrender the relic immediately for proper study and— Hard pass, Jake interrupted. See, here's the thing. The council stripped my rank for doing my job, for saving lives, for winning battles. You called me reckless and dangerous and uncivilized. He let those words hang in the air, so I found a better employer, one that appreciated those qualities. A dead civilization can't employ you. And yet here I am with a functioning command structure and a fleet that could flatten any 3 council worlds before breakfast. Jake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Technically, according to the Relic's authority protocols, my rank is Fleet Commander Supreme. That's roughly equivalent to— what? Grand Admiral? Supreme Military Commander? I'm honestly not sure where it falls in your hierarchy because it predates your hierarchy by about 49,000 years. Counselor Zexnell spoke up, his voice carefully neutral. This is an unprecedented situation. Perhaps we should— An alarm klaxon cut through the chamber. Red emergency lights began flashing. A holographic display appeared above the central podium, showing the outer council territories. An entire fleet of warships had just emerged from hyperspace. They weren't council ships. They weren't ancient automated vessels. They were something far worse. Krell Marauders, breathed one of the counselors. The entire Scourge fleet. That's over 500 ships. Jake studied the display with professional interest. The Krell were raiders, organized, well-armed, and utterly ruthless. They'd been harassing council shipping for years, but they'd never attacked in force. They'd never dared. Until now. They've been watching, Jake said quietly. Waiting for the council fleet to be concentrated in one place. And here we are. Your entire defensive force gathered at the capital for emergency sessions about ancient artifacts. He looked at Vexthor. That's what happens when you prioritize politics over tactics. This is your fault, Vexthor shrieked. If you hadn't activated that relic. The relic has nothing to do with their attack timing. They've probably been planning this for months. Jake watched as the Krell fleet moved into attack formation. The council's defensive fleet was scrambling, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. How long until your fleet is ready for engagement? 15 minutes, a military advisor reported, his voice tight with stress. The Krell will be in firing range in 8, Jake observed. That's going to be a problem. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Counselors demanding evacuation. Military personnel shouting orders. Vexthor calling for immediate surrender negotiations. Through it all, Jake stood calmly, his hand resting on the pocket containing the crystal relic. Finally, Vexthor turned to him, his pride visibly warring with desperation. If you have the command authority you claim, can you stop them? Can I? Jake pretended to consider it. Yes. The ancient fleet is more than capable of handling the Krell. Those 37 ships use technology your scientists would need centuries to understand. It wouldn't even be a fair fight. Then do something. Here's the thing, Vexthor. You stripped my rank, called me unfit for command, sent me to catalog pottery shards on a dead planet, and now you want me to save the council with the very same qualities you punished me for? Jake let the silence stretch. That's going to require negotiation. You're extorting the council during an invasion? I'm establishing terms of employment, Jake corrected. First, full reinstatement of my rank. Second, A formal apology for the charges. Third, humanity gets a permanent seat on this council with full voting privileges. And fourth, he looked directly at Vexthor. You stop calling us reckless. We're not reckless. We're just willing to make hard choices when everyone else is busy forming committees. Counselor Zexnel spoke quickly. Agreed. All terms accepted. Now please. Done. Jake pulled the crystal from his pocket. It pulsed once with brilliant light, and across 12 systems, the ancient fleet received a single, simple command. Engage. The holographic tactical display in the council chamber updated in real time, showing the moment the ancient warships activated their weapon systems. Jake had linked his neural implant to the chamber's displays, giving everyone a front-row seat to the galaxy's most one-sided battle. 37 ships against 500. The Krell must have thought they'd already won. They were about to learn better. What are those? Breathed a counselor as the ancient ships appeared on sensors. They were sleek, angular things that seemed to bend light around their hulls, making them difficult to focus on directly. Each one was roughly the size of a council destroyer, but with energy signatures that registered off the scale. Fleet designation Omega, Jake said, his attention split between the display and the tactical data flowing through his implant. Automated warships. Self-repairing, self-sustaining. Powered by zero-point energy reactors. Armed with weapons your scientists don't have names for yet. The Krell fleet had noticed the newcomers. Their formation adjusted, weapons coming online. 500 ships turned their attention to 37. This is suicide, Vexthor muttered. Even with superior technology, the lead ancient ship fired. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The weapon, later classified as a coherent energy lance, for lack of better terminology, didn't fire a projectile or a beam. It created a line of pure destruction that connected 2 points in space. One moment the Krell flagship existed. The next moment there was nothing but expanding debris and shocked silence. Then all 37 ancient ships opened fire. Holy! Mort's vocal processor cut out entirely. Pip had all 4 hands over his eyes, peeking through his fingers like watching a horror movie. Jake just smiled. The ancient fleet moved through the Krell formation like a hot knife through butter. Their weapons fired with precision that no organic crew could match. Their shields, if they even were shields, simply absorbed incoming fire and converted it to power. And their maneuvering made council ships look like they were flying through molasses. A Krell destroyer tried to ram one of the ancient ships, probably figuring collision was better than slow destruction. The ancient ship didn't evade. It didn't need to. The moment the Krell vessel touched its hull, some kind of gravitational field grabbed it, spun it around, and hurled it back into 3 of its companion ships. All 4 exploded simultaneously. That's not possible, whispered the Council's military advisor. The G-forces alone should. Different rules, Jake said. Different physics. These ships were built by people who understood the universe at a level we're still working toward. The Krell fleet, recognizing they were outmatched, tried to retreat. Tried being the operative word. The ancient ships had already established some kind of interdiction field. Hyperspace drives refused to engage. Warp cores couldn't form stable fields. The Krell were trapped. This is slaughter, Vexthor said, though whether he was horrified or impressed was unclear. This is warfare, Jake corrected. Clean, efficient, overwhelming force applied with precision. The Krell have been raiding council space for years, killing civilians, taking slaves. Now they get to learn what happens when they pick a fight with someone who doesn't care about looking civilized. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, the Krell Scourge fleet no longer existed. Some ships had been destroyed outright. Others had been disabled and were being held in some kind of stasis field for later processing. Not a single ancient ship had taken damage. The council chamber was silent except for the hum of holographic projectors and the sound of Morty's cooling fans working overtime. Pip, Jake said quietly. You still with us? The young Quellen lowered his hands slowly. Yes? I think. Is it over? For now? Jake dismissed the tactical displays and returned the crystal to his pocket. The ancient fleet will patrol the border systems for a while. Make sure any other bright ideas get discouraged. But the Krell won't be a problem anymore. Counselor Zexnall found his voice first. That was the most impressive military operation I've ever witnessed. That was Tuesday, Mort added. For humans, anyway. They're always doing something insane and somehow making it work. Vexthor looked like he'd swallowed something particularly unpleasant. His feathers had lost their puff, and his beak opened and closed several times before words came out. We agreed to terms. You did, Jake confirmed. Full reinstatement, formal apology. Humanity gets a council seat, and you stop insulting us. The council will honor its agreement, Zexnall said quickly, before Vexthor could object. Though I suspect we'll need to add additional terms regarding command authority for that. He gestured vaguely at the space where the tactical display had been. The ancient fleet answers to me, Jake said flatly. Non-negotiable. The Relic chose me specifically because I'm compatible with their command philosophy. Try to take it away, and the fleet will interpret it as a hostile action. And then what? Vexthor demanded, some of his bluster returning. They'll attack the council? They'll shut down and sleep for another 50,000 years, Jake said, taking their technology with them, along with the defense grids, the sensor networks, and about 10 other systems I haven't told you about yet, because I'm not sure you deserve them. That shut Vexthor up. Jake turned to Pip, who was still looking shell-shocked. You did good, kid. Held it together when it counted. That takes guts. I didn't do anything. I mostly screamed and fainted. You came with me into that chamber when every instinct told you not to. You documented everything even though you were terrified. That's the definition of courage. Being scared and doing it anyway. Pip's 4 eyes brightened slightly. Really? Really? How'd you like a promotion? I'm going to need an assistant for my new assignment. Someone who knows protocol but isn't afraid to bend it when necessary. Yes? Yes. I mean, if that's within proper channels and... We'll file the paperwork later, Jake said. Mort? You in? The robot's optical sensors focused on Jake. You're asking if I want to continue associating with a human who breaks every rule, attracts trouble like a magnet, and just became the most powerful military commander in the galaxy by accident? That's the gist of it. When do we start? Jake grinned. Right after the extremely awkward ceremony where Vexthor has to apologize to me in front of everyone. The counselor's feathers ruffled with indignation, but Zexnall was already preparing the official documents. The council kept its word, reluctantly, but it kept it. And somewhere in the depths of space, 37 ancient warships settled into patrol patterns, their sensors watching over a civilization that had almost forgotten how to fight. Almost. 3 days later, Jake stood in the same council chamber where he'd been demoted, wearing a fresh uniform that actually fit properly this time. Pip fidgeted beside him, adjusting his new assistant's insignia for the 14th time. Mort had been polished to a shine he clearly found embarrassing. The council had assembled in full formal regalia, which meant lots of ceremonial robes and uncomfortable-looking headpieces. Vexthor stood at the central podium, looking like someone had forced him to swallow a live fish. Let's get this over with, the avian counselor muttered, his voice barely audible. Louder, Jake said cheerfully. I want everyone in the back to hear. Vexthor's beak clacked with suppressed rage, but he complied. Commander Jake Donovan, the council apologizes for its hasty judgment regarding your previous actions. Upon review, we have determined that your unorthodox methods, while unconventional, were... He paused, visibly struggling. Effective and justified. And, Jake prompted, and humanity will be granted a permanent seat on this council with full voting privileges. And, Vexthor's feathers practically stood on end, and humans are not reckless. They are strategically flexible. Close enough. Jake turned to Pip and stage whispered, Mark this day. I got a politician to admit he was wrong. That's rarer than finding ancient superweapons. A few chuckles rippled through the chamber. Even some of the counselors looked amused. Counselor Zexnell stepped forward with a velvet cushion bearing Jake's old rank insignia, the commander's bars that Vexthor had so theatrically cut off 3 weeks ago. By the authority vested in me by the Galactic Council, I hereby restore your rank and all privileges associated with it. He pinned the insignia to Jake's shoulder with practiced efficiency. But then something unexpected happened. The ancient crystal in Jake's pocket pulsed with warmth, and a holographic display materialized above both of them, visible to the entire council chamber. Dual Command Authority. Recognized Galactic Council rank. Commander Fleet. Omega rank. Fleet Commander. Supreme Combined. Authority. Tier 1. Strategic Command. Oh, that's just perfect, Mort muttered. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Zexnell looked at the display, then at Jake, then back at the display. Is this... Are you saying you now have 2 official ranks? Apparently the Relic doesn't care about council politics, Jake said, though he was grinning. It maintains my Fleet Commander Supreme designation regardless of what you call me. Which means... He did some quick mental math based on the ancient hierarchy the Relic had downloaded. I'm now technically one of the highest-ranking military officers in council space, maybe the highest, depending on how we count command authority. Vexthor made a sound like a deflating balloon. This is highly irregular, protested another counselor. We can't have dual command structures. What if council orders conflict with whatever the ancient fleet considers priorities? Then I use judgment, Jake said. You know that thing you demoted me for using in the first place. I follow council orders when they make sense. I follow the ancient protocols when they make more sense. And when neither makes sense, I make my own decisions, which, let's be honest, is what I was going to do anyway. This is chaos, Vexthor H.